Speaking of barriers, we did have a discussion with Ji-Wan yesterday about her Canadian experience, and it was very eye-opening to me, despite the Canadian strength of the network, that very few people are using the CMSC or the original CMSC protocol. How are we going to overcome these barriers? How are we going to, let's talk a little bit about, we all want to do it, so we're 5 of us. And we had a few people at the meeting, but it just seems since 2001, we're not getting the message out. What are your thoughts about how we can overcome the barriers and make it user-friendly? And there was some discussion yesterday about prostate protocol, right, with the scanning. Why can't we get this accepted as an international protocol? And how, and if not, why and how can we change this?
I think one of the telling messages yesterday was one of our colleagues who's a radiologist was a little reluctant to change his way of doing image acquisition to the recommended protocol. But when he did it, he said he loved it. He found it didn't take more work for him. It actually took less time to acquire the data. And he's starting to use that same protocol for other studies. So I think part of it is just trying to get that message across that this is not more work for the MRI center. It's not going to take up more time, more cost, and it might improve their workflow overall. That's working at the micro level. And then on the macro level, that's why David was able to bring a lot of the vendors to the table, and they were very positive about how they could potentially contribute to getting this more endorsed at the manufacturer level and perhaps getting it as more standardized cards onto the scanners as new scanners are being updated.
Well, it just seems to me what you did yesterday, getting those people from the manufacturers, was a huge first step. There's always this dichotomy between the clinician and industry, but in this case, they had a really strong voice. I really enjoy listening to their opinion and understanding their problems, because they have as many problems from their end. So.
Yeah, and it was really clear that that's why it's good that we have an international alignment, because they made it very clear, if the Europeans have a different demand than the North Americans, we are global companies, so we cannot provide different protocols in different parts of the world. So I think it's important that we align on what are the core sequences, and if we all agree on it, they will have to follow suit, I think, and make that available to us in a practical manner and in a way that is comparable across the vendors, who obviously have a different agenda. They want to differentiate themselves.
Yeah.
They don't want to be similar, because then they're helping the competition. But we need to force them to converge and agree on a core protocol. And that only works if we are internationally aligned. Otherwise, they don't know who to follow.
And I think taking a multi-pronged approach is, I think, the most important. So, given that it's been over a decade since the original guidelines meeting, at least the CMSC meeting, where the word hasn't spread,
right.
Taking the international approach, partnering up with people globally, and then I think including the vendors, was really, really impressive.
That was a great idea, David, really.
And then also including, like the last reiteration, organizations like the American radiology groups to come to the table as well, because they have a big voice in it. So I think we have to look at where there may be opportunities that weren't tapped into in years past. And I think we talked about, people will recognize or won't forget, studies or guidelines if you continue to, it sounds terrible, but putting it in their face, like constantly put it out there and say, okay, this is why it's important to have these guidelines for clinical care. And so as much as we can push it forward, whether it's, abstracts at meetings or, paper handouts, I think that's really going to disseminate it quite well.
Yeah, but a level playing field, I think, I saw that yesterday quite clearly. We I think, gotten very skittish about interacting with pharma and interacting with industry, but having the voice of the manufacturer at the table was quite an eye-opener. We realize that they have, yes, a profit motive, but they also have a workload that they have to deal with. And 2 voices coming, one from Europe and one from the States and Canada, makes it difficult. So I think what you said, Fred, is right. Maybe bringing them to the table, we giving them a level playing field to play from, makes the most sense. Don't you think so, Tony?
Absolutely, and also there's a lot of good regional approaches towards this. UNL and Maori have been very successful in getting a lot of centers on the East Coast to adopt a standardized protocol that's compatible with what we've been recommending.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of work, right? Like you said, it's a lot of work that goes into it, and it's a lot of education to show how this is not going to be overburdensome, how it's not actually changing the workflow for the radiology centers, and it actually is improving the throughput, right? Like your neuroradiologists in Vancouver, once you can get someone to try it and they see how easy it is, then they start using it for other indications. And so I think it's an educational journey, and we have to just, again, be at the doorstep of many of these places.